So really, the purpose of quiet time, the number one purpose of quiet time, is to connect us with God. When I use the word quiet time, there's a lot of different words that are used. Most churches will use the word consecration. They might use the word of devotion. Others would use the word to develop spiritual habits or spiritual disciplines. So all those are different terms for the same thing, quiet time. So in today's society, a lot has been emphasized on different aspects of the Christian life. But if you were to go back like maybe 50 years or 60 years, everybody was talking about devotion. They might use different words, but everybody was talking about spending time with God. And today, I don't know if it's because we're busy or because if it doesn't sell, but we don't really talk a lot about spending time with God, having time with God. But the importance of spending time with God, number one, is for our relationship with God. Number two, for our own personal development. Because when you spend time with God, you get to know who you are. But in getting to know who you are, you also start to challenge yourself. And you start to see that there are times when you're not right, that there are times when you're wrong. And I think that a lot of times conflicts that we have with people, sometimes the conflicts are our fault. Not all the time, but sometimes our conflicts are our fault. And the danger in having a lot of conflicts with people is when you are never wrong. So if we look in our own life, and we can see we have conflicts. You have conflicts with your wife, your husband, you have conflicts with your family members, you have conflicts with your friend, and there's not any occasion on any of those times where you can say, it's my fault. Then you don't have a true perception of yourself. Because all of us, we make errors, we make mistakes. So there's somebody in this world that I have offended who has not offended me, who didn't do something to me. Because if there's nobody in this world who I haven't offended, who hasn't done anything, that would mean that I'm perfect.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Completely?
I believe
percentage
so.
of the time?
What's that?
What percentage of the time?
It's not so much percentage of the time. Okay, you take a person like Paul. Paul knows the Bible well. He understands scripture, he understands God. He knows the Bible very, very well. So a person with that kind of knowledge shouldn't be harming other people. But yet he's harming other people and he feels what he's doing is right, but he never ever sees that he has done something wrong. Right? So when Paul becomes more mature and he's teaching the gospel and people are persecuting and people are harming him for doing what's right, Paul can remember that there was a time when he did bad things to people. So now he can forgive them because he recognizes that what is in them is in him. And you can take anybody in the Bible except for Jesus. They've always made a mistake. And when others offend them, they're able to default back on the mistake that they made and realize that they're not perfect and I'm not perfect.
You can see that you're not perfect, but persons who offend you, you can walk away from them and it will have anything to do with that.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things because for me, people offend us and people do bad to us. Yes, it's not fake, it's real. But I think a part of the problem that we have in church is that some offenses are not the cause of another person. Some offenses are the cause of our perception. But the way that you know if an offense is the cause of another person or the offense is the cause of your own perception is if you can recall a time in life where you offended somebody, then that means that you probably have better judgment to know when a person has offended you for real. But if you cannot recall any time in life where you have done something to somebody and you were the one in the wrong, and they were not at fault. If you can't recall that, then your judgment about other people is probably not that solid. And then spending time with God, God begins to reveal to you things that are in you where you can start to see that I have some mistakes.
Yeah, we're not perfect.
Yeah, but of course, but what I find is most people don't believe that. Like most people believe that the offense is everybody else, and I have done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And people won't say that, but it's kind of like this. If my mom and I have a problem, because my mom says, Neville, you talk too much. I'm tired of hearing you talk. Right? That's what my mom says. My mom and I are in that problem. My mom said, you talk too much. I don't like when you talk. Just be quiet. So now we have an offense. But now my friend then Q and I have an offense. And he says to me, Neville, you talk too much. I don't like when you talk so much. Right? And I have offense with Q. Now I'm over here with my son David, and he said, Dad, you talk too much. I don't like how you talk. Right? I'm having offenses with all these people, and they're not telling me that they have a problem with me that's distinct from the other person. Everybody's saying the same thing. I need to have a discernment to know if what they're saying is true or what they're saying is not true. And the problem that I find with us as Christians is because we might know the Bible, but we don't spend time letting God evaluate us. We don't hear God say, Neville, you talk too much. Stop talking. But when I hear God say it, now when my mother says it, I'm not as offended. When my best friend says it, I'm not as offended. When my children say it, I'm not as offended because God has already kind of dealt with it. But what I find happens a lot of times, because we don't get to spend that time with God, we have a perception of ourselves, and every human being is like that. You have unless there's something really unhealthy, you have a perception that you're good. And if you're not careful, you have a perception that you are perfect. We wouldn't use that word, but that's the perception we have. Because if you and I are in a debate and I believe something, I never believe what you say. I always believe what I say, right? Because then I wouldn't maintain that position. But what happens when you get into quiet time is that that's the place where God now in solitude gets to debate with you. And he gets to challenge you on certain things. So now when God reveals to me, these are some of your issues now. When I come into the world and I deal with people, they bring it up, I'm aware of it, so I'm not as offended. So now I don't become an enemy of my mother, but what she's saying is true. I don't become an enemy of Q, but what he's saying is true. I don't become an enemy of my son, but what he's saying is true. But those same individuals can say things to me that are hurtful and that are not true because of their weaknesses and because of their shortcomings and because of their problems. So it's not that I'm always wrong and other people are right, but it's also that I'm not always right.
Right.
Because there's something that's not wrong. Yeah. But when God reveals more of the wrong that's in me, and I own up to it, the less I become offended of people. Because I start to realize that two things. I start to realize, one, people sometimes are reacting to the negative that's in me. And number two, most times, this is really the primary problem, is that I am reacting to the negative that's in the person. But when I can see negatives in me, then I realize that God has to help me to grow. The same way that God has to help them to grow. But when it comes to solitude, I think the reason why there's a lot of conflict amongst people is because most of us don't see anything wrong with ourselves. And even the things that we see, those are usually the extreme things. Those are the extreme things because there are some parts about us that are obviously not right. But then there are other parts about us that are harder to see. So for example, a person who's angry and a person who gets into their temper, and like when you talk to them, they start yelling and shouting. they know they have a problem with anger because it's obvious, you know. But a person who kind of like spread rumors, but they do it in the name of like righteousness. You know, God talked to me and God told me this private stuff about people, so let me go and talk to these people, right? But what happens is because you feel like you're doing it for God, you almost don't realize that that's a negative behavior because you don't have this for God. But yeah, but the reason I bring this up is because when we talk about spending time alone with God, there are benefits as it relates to our relationship with Him. There are benefits as it relates to us as individuals, where we're spending time with Him actually helps us. But it's not so obvious. Sometimes we have a lot of offenses with people because we have to spend time with God and let God deal with some things that we have to deal with. But also in that, it doesn't mean I'm always wrong. Also in that, God begins to give me a clearer vision. So when someone says something about me that is not true, that I know is not true, instead of getting so angry, I wanted to combat with them. I started to understand, okay, I have done this thing and spending time with God and recognize that there's something that I'm not right. Has this person done that? And almost every time the answer is no. So if this person has not done this, then I need to have patience with them because God has helped me with what I've been dealing with. And now they need help with what they're dealing with. But I'm not going to own what they're dealing with. For example, we all have weaknesses and we all have strengths. When a person criticizes you for your strength, especially when you're close to God and you know God, you can either get offended that they're criticizing you for your strength, or you can recognize that there's something wrong with their judgment. Because when you don't spend time with God, it impairs your judgment. So if you're a giving person, you know what people tell you if you're a giving person? They tell you that you're selfish. Now, why would a person tell you that you're selfish if you're a giving person? Like, it doesn't make logical sense. But yet it does. Because if I don't want to give, and you're giving, right? I have to find a way to make myself feel good about you, right? A person who's really, really kind, who doesn't like to argue, who doesn't like to fight. You know what criticism they oftentimes get? Soft, right? Now, why do people tell you that you're soft when you're kind and you're considerate towards you? Because something in me doesn't want to be kind, right? And I can't feel comfortable with you being the way that you are unless I attack it and I make it seem like it's not good. But the whole reason why I'm bringing that up is that a lot of our conflicts come from negatives that are in people. But if we overlook the negative that is in us, it makes it harder to overcome things. Because the worst thing is when someone's arguing with you about something that's true, and you don't see it. That's what makes it really, really hard. So the best way to discover things and to understand things is for God to talk to you and to let God speak to you. Because I can talk about how I'm lazy, I shouldn't eat food, and how I'm not blessed and all kinds of stuff. You're gonna get mad. But when you do Bible study and God says it to you, you're not in a place where you want to fight God. Most people, especially when you're alone with Him, you're at the place like, God, help me. And that's the strength. One of the strengths of quiet time is that God can change you, and God can cause you to grow.